let's go. This is round 4 of the tournament, and I played a black game here. um, I'm currently one out of 3, and my opponent had half a point out of 3. Um, and so it was an even battle, let's just say. And let's take a look at the start already. I played knight f6, and I play a... It's kind of a... I'm threatening a Nimzo Indian after knight c3. But after knight f3, which is generally considered to be the best version of the anti-Nimzo, I'd play c5 and we go into a Benoni. My opponent instead played g3, playing a sort of Catalan setup. But this bishop in Benoni setups is great on this diagonal, and probably going to be quite terrible here. So I play c5 regardless, even though you get f4 and e4 in the later points of the opening / early middle game. Yeah, so we play a Benoni type structure, bishop g2, and I play g6. Knight c3 is normal, bishop g7, e4, and my opponent can play f4, e5, but I'll prevent e5 of course, but yeah. My apologies, I am very sick. There was a cold going on around in the tournament, and I caught it, and I started getting sick. I mean, I've been sick for quite a while, but I've had a bit of a sniffle for like a couple of days now, but I started properly getting sick yesterday evening. I was hoping it would be better for today, because today I'm actually also going to play a classical game this evening. It didn't really work, unfortunately, but you know, we'll figure it out. I castled, which is normal. Knight f3, which happened here, which I don't really think is great. I think you can do this maneuver immediately and then play bishop f4 or pawn f4. But I think the main... well, maybe it's still fine. I thought that you should play f4 here, and only then play knight f3 and then this maneuver. But yeah, rook e8. There's no bishop b5, so I don't have to play a6 first. So rook e8 threatens here, forcing knight d2, or forcing some response, and my opponent chooses knight d2 to defend the pawn. I also pin the e-pawn, so I could put pressure on d5 here, but there's no real way to put pressure, unfortunately. So yeah, instead I just played normal moves like knight bd7, maybe going to e5. My opponent castled, and I played a6. And once you get this setup, you're generally quite happy as black. It also helps prevent knight c4, well, once I get there. My plan is to also meet knight c4 with knight e5, because it attacks this pawn. And from there I feel like I'm fine. So my opponent plays a4, preventing b5, and also if I ever move it, then this becomes a pin, so I can't even take back. If I can hold a pawn here, then I'm probably happy. So I played rook b8, which prepares b5. My opponent tries to defend with queen b3, so in this case they can take and win a pawn. However, I played b5, and the point is that my opponent, let's say, take, I get queen b6, and it pins the knight on the queen, winning a piece. You can, however, play this line. Knight c4, take, and knight takes d6. So you get an exchange back for your piece. So you get an exchange on 2 pawns, and I have to go here, back, because of issues with the back rank at some points, because you take here and take here. But I get a second pressure point on b2. I thought that this would be at least decent for me. I think this is probably the best thing you can do as white. One thing I missed in the game, and I only noticed in analysis, is I moved my knight to d7 to make room, but knight can go back, so my rook is actually just defended, so you can't play knight c4 here, which would have been the main move in my calculation. Knight c4 here was the main move in my calculation, actually. My opponent did take, by the way. Take once, and then played rook a7, which I don't think is great. It's a rook on the 7th file, but this knight is defended, this is all just safe. Played queen b6, attacking the rook, defending my b-pawn, defending the rook again, defending here. So yeah, I was quite happy here already. I had a pawn here, so this knight is kind of stuck. And if the knight is stuck, then this bishop has no moves. But yeah. So after rook a7, my opponent played queen a2. Queen a3, I'd play b4, of course. Attacking the which defends the rook, and maybe supports like rook a8, or maybe like queen a5, and then using the rook a lot better because the queen is gone. But I just let my opponent do that, because if they ever do this and I just take back with the rook, then my rook is defending perfectly, and I'm not afraid of anything in that position. So I can just ignore the threats, because the best defense is ignoring it, basically. Knight e5. And I think my opponent underestimated my move. It's really, actually, it's not, you can't really defend it, actually. I'm going to play knight d3 here. And what you do? Can't play queen b1 because the rook hangs. Can't really do anything. Maybe you should just play knight f3 again, and that should probably be fine. Or, yeah. You also can't play f4, I believe, because of c4 options later on in lines. My opponent played knight to d1, which I'm also not sure about. It tries to move to e3, but like, what's the point? I really don't see the point. Maybe it's you're supposed to prep b3, bishop b2 or something as well. I really don't see it. I do play knight d3, knight e3, and instead of taking, I actually played a different move, which I thought was interesting. In analysis with my opponent, we looked at knight b4, attacking the queen, and then trapping the bishop, or like this, probably trapping the rook. But you can play this, forcing the queen trade, and then the rook is, it's completely stuck, but how do you attack it? Ow. That hurt my head. So, it's probably good for me, but I don't think it's the best thing you can do. I went for a different line, which was knight g4. If I'm allowed to take, I'm happy. Just take there, play c4 or something, and then my opponent will probably cry. Put pressure here as well, actually. Yeah, put pressure there, even. And if they take, then I take, with the bishop threatening this. And you can't play f3 because of c5, and actually let's take a look at that, because it's kind of what happened in the game. f3 didn't happen, but c4 check. You get this. You can sack the exchange here, win the piece, but you lose the you lose the bishop in the end. So in the end I win an exchange there. So also bishop takes threatens bishop e2, trapping the rook, which is kind of difficult to defend. The only way to defend, or the only ways, are bishop f3 and knight f3, because f3 loses. So bishop f3 I take, and I just win the e-pawn. So the only chance you have is knight f3. I take the pawn, probably not even good, but I can consider taking the pawn. And then you have some discovered attack, but I don't see the actual point. So let's say knight f3, rook takes e4. Where do you go to do the discovered attack here? There's nothing there. There's just nothing, right? I think I can just take the pawn and like even like knight d2. I can even consider rook a4 or something, but no, that loses a pawn. Or rook d4. That's also probably bad. Just rook e8. You can't attack this bishop in any good way, because this I just take with the rook. So none of this happened. My opponent instead wanted to prep f3. So they played rook a6. Because once my queen is gone, then they can play f3. Play queen d8 to get out of the way. But now there's a new issue, because this threatens to win an exchange, and this threatens to win an exchange. And f3 doesn't solve this winning an exchange anymore, because it forces the queen and forces you to take the knight back as well. So it does win a proper exchange. So I win an exchange here. And there's not much my opponent can do. And I think even here my opponent is already in trouble. With queen d8, and queen d8 also prevents rook a7 from attacking it. And it might go like there or there. Queen b1 happened here. Also, interestingly, bishop e2 defends the knight, so I do properly win an exchange here. Bishop f3, which is mediocre, because knight takes, right? Yeah, knight takes, I take here. Queen takes, and queen f6, winning an extra pawn even. Which, yeah, I don't think it even matters, but I consider, yeah, this is decent, but I don't think that, I mean, this pawn does matter, but I considered not taking it because I'd lose the d pawn, and then this pawn runs, but I have two pawns to run. My opponent can also, if I take, just move the queen out of the way, and I can defend this pawn, holding on to the queens for compensation, but my opponent instead decided to, once I took, to take the pawn and try to get compensation like this. But I have to connect past pawns. So, which one do you run with? Well, I have a dark squared bishop. This is dark squared promotion square. This is a light square promotion square against a light square bishop, so I should run the c pawn, despite there being a rook behind my b pawn. So I played c4. Knight returns, c3. And here my opponent tried to be tricky, and it almost worked. They played e5. I take, because there's... If I allow e6, then... Nah, that's probably still good for me. But I just take, because that's probably easy enough. And knight g4, which threatens the rook, and f6. So I can't go all the way back. Instead I went to e7. Rook c6 happened to prevent c2. Specifically, c1 queen you can't really prevent, and also supports pawn to d6. I played rook d8, which kind of prevents pawn to d6 because of rook e6. If I play rook d7, by the way, I get forked again. So maybe you can play this, but then I just take the rook and promote. Yeah, the rook can't ever leave the c file because this pawn will be worth like a piece. Yeah, rook d8, knight f6 check is the other way to play this, because it allows you to play d6 with tempo and d7, but d7 maybe not. That might not be good enough. And also d6 might not even be good enough. Yeah, my opponent just played knight e4, trying to attack this pawn. I can take this pawn, but knight takes c3, I'd lose. Is a discovered attack on my rook, so I'd also lose the b pawn. Fairly certain, at least. So I didn't want to do that. Instead I just played b4. The knight went to c5 to prevent this, but it allows c2. Knight goes to b3. And here I end the game in quite a pretty way, I wanna say. So I played bishop c3, which doesn't defend this anymore, so the knight does properly defend it, but the rook is blocked off completely. Knight c1 happened, which I don't think is accurate, but it doesn't really matter. Rook e1 attacking the knight, threatening to just win it. Knight goes to d3. And here I play rook d1, which I think is the optimal way to play this, and my opponent resigned. I think rook d1 is very pretty. The point is that if I just promote, I only get a piece. But here I can always get a queen, because I'm just threatening to take the knight. If you take the rook, I just promote, recapture, promote. The best thing you can do is knight b2. And here I mean I have a lot of options. I might even be able to do this. No, that's probably bad. Oh no, that's good enough. I can just take that pawn. But I can also make a queen here, give up this full rook, but I still have a queen now. And this is just super easy from here. Because also this pawn starts running now. So it's 2-2. Or it's 2 wins, 2 losses in the tournament so far. I did win this game, so that's great. I like playing the Benoni, and people are not properly prepared to play against it in my experience. Oh, we can play b5 here. That's also quite funny actually, just playing b5 straight up, because there's no knight on c3 yet. Okay. Castle. Now b5. Whoa. Oh, no? Huh? b5. What's the issue with taking the pawn? Queen a5, knight goes back. Oh, you just... Okay, yeah, that's Whoops. That's good to know. Good to have seen before once. But rook e2 is also just fine. Already better here. b5 still, because I still win the e-pawn. Right? Wait, do I? Yeah. I mean, I don't really, but... King d2. I mean, I'm threatening f5, and you're only out of that pin is king d2. Like... My god. Oh, you can win the bishop like that, that's funny. Because of back rank issues. My god, that's a line and a half, man. But, like... I just played a normal move instead, and we're basically equal now. There we go. Okay. Yeah, knight c4 is probably the best move because it forces me to not play b5 because I lose the d-pawn. So I'd have to play knight e5. And then you just go back to a3 and defend b5. That's funny. But yeah, take, and you should take. But this is just bad. And the line is knight e5. I mean, that makes sense also, just... there's a rule of thumb in the Benoni that if you can play b5 and take with the a-pawn, then it's probably decent. But this line... b4, okay. I thought this would be approximately equal, so yeah, it seems okay. But rook a7 really is not the move. Queen b6 is not even properly looked at, but it's one of the best moves. And knight e5 and knight d3, yeah. Knight c1, knight d1 also makes no real sense to me. Knight e3 makes sense. c4 here is also funny, but knight g5, knight g4 is just great. Yeah, you're basically forced to play knight f3, and I can take this, right? Yeah. Oh, you can take there, that's funny. Because then there's a discovered attack like that. So rook takes f7 would win a pawn here. Actually, yeah, but I just looked at the line, you just play rook a4. And then you have to sack this exchange even. Which is not terrible, but you're not happy to do so. Yeah, but yeah, rook a6 is just not the move. Queen d8 is optimal. Bishop e2, yeah. Apparently engine even likes rook a8 in between, but I thought just rook b6 and or rook c6, but rook b6 hangs. Okay, I can see the point. Yeah, it just makes this rook better. Yeah. Take the pawn, trade, take that pawn, start running. Yeah, I looked at this, instead of playing c3, just putting the bishop... Actually, I was planning on putting it here and then playing c3, but I thought the bishop would be quite strong defending c1. c2, knight takes e4, 2... Bishop takes e5... okay, that would also make sense. Can't play... Actually, you can play rook e8. That's funny. Just allow them to take the rook and then you just run and promote. But like, this is just so very over. I thought that that knight b3 was better than knight d3, but it probably just doesn't matter because of bishop c3 and great. Yeah. Whoa. Okay. That's quite... Rook d2 is also quite a move, but my opponent didn't let me play it because they resigned in... they just resigned after rook d1. Yeah, this is a lot worse than rook d2. That's very gross, because you just straight up can't protect this. And this only wins an exchange now instead of winning a full rook. Oh, that's so gross. Rook e1, rook d1, rook d2. Oh, what a maneuver. That's so great. Yeah. This was a good game. I'm happy with this. I think I'm gonna do the last two as well right now, so I'll make it separate videos, but I'll see you very soon.